everyone. Thank you for joining. I am Shawna K. Lister, founder of Memorable Essay College and Graduate School Admissions Consulting. I work with ambitious applicants to help them get into their dream colleges, graduate school, residency, and fellowship programs as well. So thank you for being here. And speaking of residency and fellowship, today I'm joined by Dr. Clive Goulbourne. He is a chief resident at SUNY Downstate. And in the summertime, he's going to be going on to fellowship training in cardiology. So Clive has lots of knowledge and experience that he can share with us today. So we're going to find out a little bit about his background, in particular, where he's from, how he got to where, well, some of the tips of how he got to where he is today, as well as any advice that he has for people who in the summer will be beginning their residency training, how you can use that residency training to really leverage your fellowship outcomes so you're not kind of running around when that time comes. And also, of course, his experience working with Memorable Essay. So hi, Clive.
Hi, Shawna K. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thanks again for giving of your time. So who is Dr. Clive Goulbourne? Could you tell us a little bit about you?
Well, let me see. I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, around the late 80s. I grew up in a place called Waterhouse. And that's not the safest neighborhood, but it was home. And I did my primary school at a nearby Catholic school. Then in those days, there was no GSAT in Jamaica at that time. We had what is called common entrance. Did my common entrance, passed my common entrance, went on to high school, Woolmer's Boys High School. Go Woolmer's. We're having champs right now. So there I was very interested in business and because my dad was an accountant, but also took a very keen liking to the sciences. So I kind of half my studies were in business, half was in sciences. Went on, did sixth form. After sixth form, wasn't quite sure where I was going to go to college, if I was going to go to college in Jamaica or the States, because at that time, most of the family had migrated already. So I actually worked for 3 years in Jamaica. My first job was as a lab technician in a blood laboratory. That's where all those blood tests that we send our patients to get, I was basically running those tests. So not an experience with medicine at that point, I would say. From that, I decided to apply to medical school. I didn't get into medical school on my first application, actually. I went to the University of West Indies for 1 year, did pure and applied sciences, and then transferred the year after to medical school. Then everybody knows medical school is 5 years. It's very rough. Eventually made it through that. And then I worked for 3 or 4 years in the Mandeville Regional Hospital, where I honed some of my clinical skills. Did my USMLEs, which a lot of the interns and house officers in Jamaica now are actually doing. And that's the steps, we call them, to get to the United States to do your residency. So I did my USMLEs, applied for the match, and luckily I matched on my first match and matched my number one program, which was SUNY Downstate, which it's the State University of New York. And been here for 4 years. And as you said, starting July this year, I'll be going into cardiology at the Stony Brook Hospital. That's a little bit of a rundown of me so far. I mean, I'm a fun-loving guy. I love sports. One of the few Jamaicans I think that love ice hockey. I don't know why, but I love ice hockey. Never played it before, but yeah.
You love it.
But it's a very intense game, I must say. Okay. If you've ever seen ice hockey, it's non-stop action. Not like basketball, we got a lot of timeouts and things like that. You change on the fly. You got to adapt to the situations. There's no more fighting in hockey. They used to have fighting, but there's no more fighting in hockey. But it's a very exciting game. I really love that about it.
Okay, yeah. So you like things outside of medicine. And you mentioned lab already, but is there anything else that pushed you toward med?
I mean, as a youngster growing up, I would say I would always tell my grandmother I'm going to fix her. I grew up with her when she told me I was about 3 or 4 years old. I said that I'm going to be her doctor. And it was where she was struggling with morbid obesity and the different medical problems that comes with that. And I could just remember always looking at her and telling her that I'm going to be her doctor one day. So I would say that's definitely one of the driving forces that, pull me towards the sciences and medicine itself. But I was also always fascinated by just science in general. I would call myself a Trekkie, where I would watch Star Trek and Star Wars, things like that. I had this fascination with theoretical physics. Then eventually I found myself watching dramatizations on television and documentaries such as Trauma, Life in the ER. My brother would always tell me that whenever I watch that show, I'm like really into it. And, I could tell you what the diagnosis was and what the treatment is. And it's like, at this point, I had no medical knowledge really, but just by watching these shows. And I would say that's definitely some of the things that drew me towards medicine.
Okay, that's funny because sometimes when you read, I read a lot of these blogs where other people are giving like their mid-school advice, and they always tell people, don't say Grey's Anatomy made you want to be a doctor.
Well, this was a time way before Grey's Anatomy.
But there are tons of people who will tell me, oh, it was a documentary or it was a series or
medicine, it's one of those things that it's like when you learn medicine, you have to experience it. So you can't people just say that, hey, I just want to be a doctor. No, there's something that they saw or experienced that really drove them towards medicine. Mm-hmm. If you just get up one day and say, I want to be a doctor, you're probably not going to end up loving that your time in medicine.
Right. Okay. I've heard that too. So yes, I will agree with that. All right. And so in terms of making the decision to do residency training in the US, or I guess additional training, whatever you want to call it. I don't remember the stage of your medical training you got to in Jamaica, but you're obviously doing some training after the 5 years. But what made you decide to then train for residency in the US?
One of the major driving force was my love for cardiology, and we have a residency program, but it's just general internal medicine. You wouldn't get the opportunity to go and subspecialize after. If I were to do that, I'd have to leave, go to Canada after, and then I would have to come back to Jamaica. And another issue was that most of the family had migrated. So that was another reason as well. But I would say definitely my driving force was the fact that I wanted to do cardiology. And day one, when I stepped through the doors of Downstate, it was all about getting into cardiology because I was sure that's what I wanted to do, cardiology. So I would say that was one of my biggest driving forces to come to the States, was actually to further my knowledge in cardiology.
Okay. All right. So we're right into the cardiology. So this is you through the door on day one. For somebody who they're packing their bags now, and they're going to residency, actually IMG or not, like whichever person. But specifically, I deal a lot with a lot of IMGs. So for them, summer coming up, they're starting residency and they have it in their mind somewhere that they really want to match into cardiology in the next couple of years, 3 years, 2 years, so on. What should they do from day one?
From day one, really, I think you need to have a plan, some framework in your mind of, what exactly your goals are. Don't just go into residency and think, okay, first year is going to be torture. It's going to be a very hard first year, but still have something that you want to achieve. For me, my first year, I just wanted to get my name out there. I wanted to make sure that the people in cardiology at my program knew who I was, knew my interests, so that I could set myself up for the next stage, which was in second year when I had more time. I could go on some research papers with them, I could do some case with them, do some consults with them. So you got to get your name and your face out there. That's the first thing. A lot of people, as IMGs, we are very limited in terms of the kinds of programs that we match into. Very rarely you'll hear an IMG match into somewhere such as Johns Hopkins or Harvard for internship. For fellowship, maybe, but for internship, very, very rarely. It's very, very difficult. And that's just how the US system is set up in terms of, American grad versus international grad. So just because you match to a place that's not a pedigree or an Ivy League place, it doesn't mean that you can't further go on to match somewhere else. But don't just come to this place that you're working at now. It might be some place in Brooklyn, like here, or somewhere rural in Kentucky, who knows. It's an opportunity. And don't just give away that opportunity by saying, hey, I'm looking to match outside. Always match inside first, because you're going to need those people that you work with. You're going to need those recommendations to get you the opportunities outside. So don't just forego and say, yeah, I don't really love this place. This was my first choice. I'm going to try and match to Harvard or to Duke. Always try and match inside first. Get them to know you. Get your face out there, as I said, and that will put you on that road to success. Mm-hmm. I think that's a major thing, and that's a lot of IMGs. When I go back to my residency application, you have the good scores and you apply, and you don't get as many interviews as per se an American grad. As I said, that's just how the system is. But don't get disheartened by that. You just need to get that foot into the door. I have IMGs in Brook, because where I'm chief resident now. I have international graduates that are going to Mayo Clinic, that are going to Mount Sinai for some of the most prestigious fellowship programs. So just because you match somewhere, don't get disheartened. But once you get that foot through the door, that's all you need. That's all you need.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's, again, in terms of, being on certain forums or just seeing how people talk about, well, one, DO graduates, and two, like non-US citizen IMGs. I think, of course, having interacted with a lot of you, not just in terms of supporting you, but actually for care, for questions on WhatsApp, or actually going to you for care. Some people before they migrate, like I might see them at UE or something. I always think that's very funny, because obviously a lot of you are very brilliant physicians. Yes. You just are, and you've had so much clinical experience. So it's just a matter of, I think, like, as you're saying, like going to a program that is a good program, and wherever you are, because even if you go to the number one program or school, this is actually for just all applicants. Like, there are tons of people who go to the best college or grad school or fellowship program, and they tank, because
it's what you make.
Fit for you. It's what you make, but it also has to be a fit for you, like a place that has certain things that you in particular need to prosper, and then you actually have to put into it, and you want to leave. And I know for the medical community, at least what I see with you guys is that you're very close, but that also ends up being hugely important in the future. Like, to me, to leave a graduate program without a network is a tragedy, because that can help you in so many ways later on. So you want to also get some friends and the network out of it as well.
Definitely. I mean, that definitely helped a lot of us as well in our application, where our predecessors who left and went to other programs were able to pull from them and get interviews for all of our candidates as well. So it's always leave that good name out there somewhere. Don't burn your bridges, as we would say.
Yes, when you get in, make sure they think highly of the program that you came from, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, so it's getting your name out there, getting the people in that specialty at your program to know about you, then really kind of getting onto people's research. Sometimes people raise the question, so I guess I can ask you how you do it. How do you get research? How do you get research opportunities, especially if you don't have the time or there's nobody at your place really doing that kind of research? Like, residency is already crazy.
The misconception that we have is that it's all about research. The truth is that when you go to fellowship programs, they know the reality. For every top-notch researcher that's out there, you need at least 1,000 good doctors to translate that research to good bedside practice. So they know that everybody's not going to be a researcher. So that's the first thing. And a lot of residents go in and think, hey, I need to have like 10 different publications. You're going to have that one person that has 20 case reports, 10 publications, but everybody can't have that. Now, it's not a matter of how much you have, but it's a matter that you've been doing something. That's what we're looking for. So you're looking that you've done something in your field of interest, first of all, and hopefully you've gotten a letter from that person that you worked with. So that's what they're really looking for. It's not that you have 5, 10 publications. You could just have two case reports, a QI project, and 1 publication somewhere. With another things that other residents look at is that you have a research, but there are 6 different people on it. That doesn't really matter. Once you're on that publication, you own that publication. You go into that interview, and that is your research, it is your publication. You make sure you know everything about it. But it's just that you are gathering data, but the fact that you are on it, you need to just present it as your research. And that's all they want. They just want to know that you've done something, you're interested in the field, and if you have a letter from somebody you worked with on that project, then that's even a bigger bonus as well. So how do you do it with this busy time? So elective time, all the programs offer electives. I had my electives planned. I knew I was going to cardiology. So day one, I went straight to the program coordinator, program director for the cardiology program. And I spoke with him, and I'm like, I want to do cardiology. How do I get on track with research? He clearly said to me, you have 1 month in your internship here. Use that 1 month and do consults, learn, get to see all the cardiologists, go to different departments, basically get your face out there. And then in second year, we can come back, we can work on some projects together. So just that meeting. So when second year came around, I already knew, where I was headed. I know where I was going. And I approached him again. We worked out a plan. He said, do the city courses, because there are some courses you have to do to get involved in research. Something's called city course. Do your city courses, get credentialed, and then he had other projects going on. I joined up with the other research fellows, and during my time there on electives, if I had a project that I liked, something I was interested in, I could bring it up to him, and then we would work something out. So it's always nice to get hooked up with a kind of a mentor. He wasn't my official mentor, but that was he was a very useful person when it came onto research. It also helps if you have programs that have people, as I said, who are interested in research. It's going to be very hard if you're in a program that doesn't have people who have any kind of interest at all in research. And it's going to be up to you to find that project on your own. Downstate is a very big program, and we have a lot of researchers. So that was also another reason when I actually selected my programs for residency. That was another reason why Downstate was at the top of my list, because of the opportunities it would offer for me for my research and going on to fellowship. But other people have done it by themselves. A group of us came together, a group of three to four of us came together. We made our own research project. We went to our mentors. We asked them what they think. They gave us some suggestions, and we basically hit it out on our own. And we did all the research, everything by ourselves. So don't try to do it alone, especially for Caribbean graduates who, when we're back home, we are not, the biggest researchers. We're not the biggest writers of case reports, but there's always help. Don't worry that there are 4 or 5 people on the research. Don't worry about that. Just get your name out there. That's all you need.
Okay, great. All right, so now I'm excited about this part. Chief resident, I've only ever seen it on TV. Who is a chief resident? Chief resident.
Who is a chief resident? So it depends on which movie you are watching.
Grace.
If you're watching House, the chief resident is a very clinical person. In reality, the chief resident is a very heavy administrative position.
Okay.
It's that link between the residents and administration. You're that gap. You kind of bridge that gap. You're that person that the residents can confide in and they can bring their problems to without having to go to administration or program director. And you can solve problems on the ground like that. You're that person that if somebody's having difficulties before it gets to the level where the program has to get involved, you're the person on the ground who can actually render some assistance to that person before it gets escalated to that kind of a level. You're also the teacher. So you will supervise rounds. Sometimes you supervise conferences. That's one of the biggest things why I actually chose to be a chief, was actually the opportunity to teach residents and teach students. But it's a lot of administrative work. I know days go by when I don't get to eat because I have meetings back to back to back to back. Usually it's because I have to take care of patients, but no, it's just meetings, meetings, meetings. And I'm like, why do we have so much meetings? And of course it feels like nothing gets done, but it's a lot of administrative work. And it can be taxing because I remember doing my residency, going to bed. I would go to bed latest probably 12, midnight, 11 p.m. During my chief year, which I thought would be easier. I found myself going to bed 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, why am I still up? Because you just have so much administrative work to do. But it's fun. You get your weekends off, which is great. I'm not used to that, but yes, it has its perks. But it's not what you actually see on TV.
Okay, so what are the other perks? You get to teach, so you get to teach, you get weekends off, you get to work with the other chiefs, right? So you guys probably become pretty close. What else? What are
I mean, for our IMG, I definitely think it's worth it because you get an opportunity to see a different side of the American healthcare system. When you're back home, you don't really get that opportunity. You see patients, and that's basically, you're just involved in clinical work. But to actually see how the system operates and to know where the shortcomings are and know certain solutions that you can fix, that you can put towards to fix it, it definitely gives you that different viewpoint of things than just being narrow-minded and looking at, okay, I have one patient in front of me and I can't get this done for this one patient. But you get this whole systems approach to say, okay, I could solve this issue and I can affect so many different patients on a population level versus just an individual level. So yeah, that's one of the perks as well. It gives you that viewpoint that you wouldn't get anywhere else.
Right, absolutely. And those of us who love public health, that's kind of the draw, like the systems-wide thing. It's just it's different perspective.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about the fellowship program you're heading to and what you love about that.
So starting in July, I will be doing cardiology at the Stony Brook Hospital. It's actually it's a part of the State University of New York program. They have different campuses. They have one in Buffalo, you have one in upstate New York, you have one in Downstate, which I'm at, and you also have one in Stony Brook. So it's one of the, I would say it's one of the best cardiology programs in the tri-state area. I was drawn to that program because, well, there is one of my former chiefs is actually there. He's in first year. And I knew about the program from he was going, and he was telling about how they, the camaraderie that he has, how the program director would email him and just check and make sure he's okay with the move and everything. They just seemed like a very friendly people. Then one of the cardiologists had a grand rounds a few months before the interview season had opened I think it was in August of last year. And he came to present, and I had some time to talk with him before, and I was just astounded by how friendly and how knowledgeable this guy was. And I was like, and he was actually interested in the same field I'm interested in, which is advanced heart failure, which is what I will be doing after I finish my cardiology general fellowship. I'll be going on to subspecialize in advanced heart failure. And I just loved how the program was set up in Stony Brook. And it would give me the perfect opportunity to learn cardiology and at the same time dabble in some research if I want to, because this program has some of the names that you see on the textbook that we read for cardiology. Some of the people are there. Some of those guidelines and researches that are published and you follow in cardiology, some of the people that do that work there. So it's an honor to actually work with such reputable persons in cardiology, and I'm definitely looking forward to be a part of that.
Okay. And as you said that, I don't know if I can kind of sell you out, but I remember you were working on a textbook chapter, right?
Yeah, so I was with one of my former attendings, and we were working on a book chapter for atrial fibrillation. That unfortunately didn't get published. But the experience, just the experience alone, it was something I could actually talk about in my fellowship interview. And even know information from that, like when I'm teaching some of the residents, I know about research that was done in the field that you wouldn't really know just by glance reading something, that in-depth that you did for that. So it didn't get published as of yet. Not saying that it can't get published later in the future, but the experience alone was worthwhile.
Okay, yeah. So I'll be looking out for those cardiology texts for your name on the front. I'm
not quite sure for them to be in the front, okay, but probably just a chapter somewhere.
You have what, like 3-4 decades of work before you, of course. Won't happen. You do. All right. So in terms of right, so that was my other question for you. When you think about your role in cardiology, what do you want your long-term contribution to be?
That's a tough question. I think I don't want my contribution to be to cardiology alone.
Okay.
I know very unlikely that I'm going to be that type of person that's going to be doing this groundbreaking research or something. I would say I'm very more clinically oriented.
Okay.
And what I would love to see is some transition in the healthcare system in the United States. It was one of the things that struck me from day one when I got here, how different things were from Jamaica, but still just how much more work needs to be done. There's a lot of disparities in healthcare, disparities based on the zip code that you live in, disparities based on the color of your skin, disparities based on the type of insurance that you have. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get us back to what I call patient-centered care. I think we've lost focus in healthcare in who is the most important person in the clinical encounter. What I've noticed is that and I fall into that trap many times as well. When you're with a patient, you end up spending 2/3 of your time with the computer. It's like you have two different patients. You have the eye patient who's in the computer, and then you have the real patient who's on the couch. Sure. And you very rarely make eye contact with that patient who's on the couch. So I would love for my legacy to be, when I retire from cardiology, is like my professors back home in Jamaica, like Professor Denbo, is that you remember about that murmur that you heard. You remember how to grade a murmur, you remember how to feel a collapsing pulse, because Dr. Goulbourne showed you how to do it. Mm-hmm. And I would love that if all of the younger generation coming up, that I could inculcate some of those clinical skills in them. I think that's what I want to leave on cardiology. Not that we forget, the importance of seeing a patient and touching a patient and just go straight to doing the echocardiography on somebody, but to actually make eye contact, talk to that patient, touch that patient, because you can be the smartest doctor out there, and if you can't relate to a patient and relate information to them in an appropriate manner, you're going to fail. So I think that's what I want to leave when I leave this field, is to actually lead that to the younger generation.
Okay. There's a young lady who earlier this year, late last year, I don't even know because time is flying. But anyway, she was applying to med, and she was actually talking about she took some time to decide whether or not she wanted to do it. And then actually one of the things that she said helped her kind of tip the scale was realizing that when she is ill and she goes to the doctor, like the minute they touch her, she feels better. They haven't done anything, they've just touched her. And I feel as if I'm the same way, like a thorough physical exam where they're like poking, it's so different.
Like what my grandmother always says, they don't feel that they've finished seeing the doctor's seen them properly unless the doctor sounds them. which is basically using the stethoscope to just listen. You don't have to even listen for anything. Just put that stethoscope on them. They're pleased. They're like, yes, doctor. That's what they want.
Instead of being
Never forget the importance of touch.
Definitely makes a difference.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And so in terms of your experience working with Memorable SA, I'm going to ask you to share a bit about that. Maybe why you chose to, and what you think.
So I did Memorable SA for my fellowship because of the experience I had with my residency. When I was applying for residency, of course, it's new. I mean, being in Jamaica, we are not used to this system of doing USMLEs and the whole matching process. It's confusing. Writing a personal statement, that sounds good. just like, oh, I love medicine. So I got help. And my first experience was definitely something that I would remember. I remember I even go back now sometimes and read that personal statement. I'm like, was this really me? This sounds so good. I mean, it just sounds so, so well put together. And I remember that experience. I remember on my interview trail, people talking to me about my personal statement. I mean, I could relate to the story because it's a true story, but just how the story was put forth and, just that how people appreciated how well written it was, that definitely left an impact. And so I decided to, go with it again for my fellowship. And again, it definitely paid off. Again, people commented me on my personal statements about, how my CV was organized and, just that whole interview prep. It was something that I don't think that I would have gotten through without getting some help from you, Shawna K. Thank you. It definitely was something that definitely gave me some advantage in my application.
Yeah, sure. And so it's like, again, having all of these things versus how you put them together, it really does make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, you have those thoughts in your head, but sometimes you just can't organize them. You don't know how to, let it flow on paper. And definitely, I think that's a challenge that a lot of us face when writing a personal statement or something like that. And it's just that other viewpoint, that other person that will be able to give you just that one thought, and you realize, oh yes, this is a good way that you can look at something. Then your thoughts begin to flow, and you be surprised at the end, like I was, like, whoa, this actually sounds very good.
I sound very good. I am amazing. Okay. Yeah. Right, great. All right, and so I guess my final question in closing might be for the person who, I guess for you, back to pure and applied. So somebody who's at that stage thinking of medicine, but they feel put off because of anything like the expense or things that are going on in their family, or just the idea of 10 more years of study,
10 more? That's more than 10, but yeah.
We're not helping, Clive, but if we could kind of do just a big picture look, I guess, what's the most fulfilling thing for you at the end of a long day when you come home that makes you happy that you did that at the end of Pure and Applied, that you said, I'm going to apply and I'm going to go. And then you did training in Jamaica, then you say, okay, I'm going to go train in the US. And then you say, okay, I'm going to specialize even more. Like what feeling do you get now at the end of your workday that makes that all worth it?
The funny thing about medicine is that we tend not to remember the good that we do. And we kind of dwell a lot on our failures. And we will remember all the failures that we've, that has occurred. And we tend not to remember the good things. But what I can remember is, especially when I was in Jamaica, I would get pleasure from just the fact that the patient who sat beside me said, thank you. And just to look in that person's eye, to know that you explained to them and they understood what you were saying, and they appreciate that. I mean, you're a young looking person, but they appreciate that, and they respect you, and they appreciate the time and effort that you put into making them feel better. I mean, oftentimes we end up causing people harm. I mean, just putting an IV into somebody's arm hurts. And when you're doing procedures, you know it's going to hurt somebody, and yet still are telling you thank you because they know they need the help. And to be in that position where somebody's at the mercy of what you can do to them, and they still appreciate you, do for them, and they still appreciate you. It is it's humbling. I can remember when you have the little old lady and she comes to you and, she brings for you some ground provisions just because she want to say thank you. I mean, that definitely is something that I think that brings me joy when I think about it. It's never, ever, ever going to be the end of the month or the end of the 2 weeks when you get your paycheck. It's never going to be. If you're going into medicine, it's a secure job. It's one of the most unsecure jobs, let me tell you. Because you can put this 20 odd years of studying, and with one patient experience, you could lose your license. It's a very precarious job situation. And if you're going to go into medicine just because you want to have a certain lifestyle or you want to have certain accolades, you're going in for the wrong reasons. And a lot of people end up regretting it and actually end up failing because of that. I think you have to find that thing deep inside of you that makes you want to be a healer to somebody in need.
All right. And so for you, it's the thank you, and it's knowing that you're a healer to someone in need.
Yeah, I think.
Or on WhatsApp, if it's okay. All right, Clive. Well, thank you so much. I actually didn't realize you have weekends off. Know that.
Yeah, as a chief, you have weekends off. Yeah.
Nice.
Well, sometimes we work. We call it moonlighting. We still have the bills to pay, but yeah, sometimes you still have to, you go out and you go see patients on your own, things like that. But yeah, you get the weekends off as chief. For the people coming up though, they might get confused where you have two different kind of chief situations in the States. You have fourth-year chief residents and you have third-year chief residents. Because I know some of my friends are chief. One of my friends is a chief resident at Howard, and they have what is called a third-year chief resident. So medicine is 3 years in the States, and so that means that the last year in training, they also do.
In medicine, you mean IM, right?
IM, internal medicine. Mm-hmm. For me, my program has a fourth-year chief residency. I finish my residency, and then for my fourth year, I do my chief year. In those residencies, chief residencies that are fourth year, is definitely a lot more academic. And for those that are third year, it's a mixture of academia and administrative work. So let's say half of the year might be administrative, and the other half you might be clinical. But for the fourth-year chiefs, a lot of it is administrative work. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. All right, Clive. Well, thank you so much. I found this very useful, so I know tons of people will find it very useful. Hopefully not everybody starts bomb rushing the cardiologist in their residency program. After they watch this, like, I'm just guessing.
They want. Don't worry about it. Cardiology is always looking for people to do work in. It's one of the most heavily studied fields. So they're always looking to get something out there, whether it be a case report or some research. Like, I went to a conference recently over the weekend, and the amount of cardiology posters that were there, I was like, this is one of the most active fields in medicine. So, yeah.
And as a patient, that's very, I don't know, that's, how would you say, is it hopeful? That gives me a lot of hope because, I have a very deep appreciation for research, obviously. So it's really nice when the research is current. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Right. You're welcome, Shawna.
We will chat. So enjoy the rest of your night.
All right. Sure thing, Shawna K.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right.